A few weeks ago, I was honored and privileged to spend 2.5 days with our Bishop Mark Webb in Rochester, along with many of my colleagues. During that time of learning and listening, people speaking and networking, Bishop Webb led us in a worship experience. And as he moved his way through the message, it was very obvious what he wanted his words to be. It was obvious that he was just trying to encourage the clergy to carry on, to stay faithful, to have hope in the midst of these difficult days of our denomination and our culture. And as he shared from Psalm 42 and providing that hope, I suddenly realized that this message was not just for clergy, but for all of us, for all and any, everywhere, who are seeking truth and wholeness as we do the work of the body of Jesus Christ through the church. I drew strength knowing that this was even the message for King David. Here's King David, who inevitably had it all. He had power, riches, fame, influence, but he was looking for a better way. The greatest king Israel ever had was broken, defeated, dejected, and overwhelmed. I've heard a very popular phrase these days for moments like those. It's been called the dark nights of our soul. Ever been there? The dark nights of our soul. And I know there are those among us this morning who are living those dark nights very profoundly right here and right now. These are those dark spaces and places in our lives that we wish we were not in. Those restless times in life that consume our being, when in our darkness we only recognize our despair. For clergy, we are living in such times where the faithful are divided, where the unfaithful witness the church is irrelevant, where the church is just offering irrelevant answers to relevant questions, where the God of their childhood never grew up. And for laity, who along with clergy struggle with emotions of guilt and brokenness and loneliness, grief, overwhelm, insecurity, and some of those emotions last a lifetime. So I come before you this morning to say I am very thankful for Psalm 42, because it supplies a way forward. It does so by reminding us that we need to be aware of our feelings, my friends, whatever they are. The psalmist writes in verse 3, "My tears have been my food both day and night." I've come to learn that feelings don't just disappear, even though our prescription oftentimes is distraction. If I could just stay distracted, if I could just stay busy enough, then I could hide from what is really within the depths of my soul. And we live in a culture that worships denial in favor of the pretend. But King David was having none of that. His emotions were raw, they were real, and they were revealing. The deepest recess of his being craved God in the hope of living in God's presence rather than that ebb and flow of feelings and emotions. You know, the more I studied Psalm 42 this week, the more I learned how similar we are to King David. We're very much alike. That we too, either presently or will or have suffered from spiritual dehydration. A yearning that is not satisfied, is not quenched, is not fulfilled. And so I offer an opportunity for all of us this morning to search those deepest emotions. That inner part of our being that is restless, that is dehydrated, and see them as a thirst for God. To coin a popular television advertisement, stay thirsty, my friends. Stay thirsty. Because in this time of thirsting for God, David remembers that which once quenched his soul. It was God's presence that quenched his soul. It was the celebration of coming to the temple of God. David bears his soul as he remembers the joy, the thanksgiving, the celebration of worship. And so I ponder whether much of our human struggle in thirsting for God is the result of impotent worship. Where David's joy, thanksgiving, and celebration in worship has morphed into droning, self-indulgence, and routine. You see, being here this morning doesn't make it worship. Let me repeat that. Being here doesn't make this worship. What makes it worship is when we offer ourselves to God. Our best selves. Our inner selves, our struggling selves, our doubting selves. What makes it worship is when we raise our voices and lift our hearts and minds. Being here, checking in, doesn't make it worship. I came across a wonderful quote this week. It said, "Worship is not geography. Worship is intimacy." I'll repeat that. Worship is not geography. It's not showing up to a place. Worship is intimacy. And only in that intimacy in God's presence does it become worship. And I think one of the most difficult parts of life is to know that when life hits us hard, the tendency many times is to run from worship rather than being drawn to worship, to that intimacy. Worship transforms when it becomes a passion of what we can offer God rather than pandering what God might offer us. Worship transcends personal preferences. Worship transcends sanctuary climate control. Worship transcends even our ingenuity of behavior that shields us from interacting with one another. Oh, there'll be Pastor Mark for lunch today after I say this. We're really good at that. We know where to park. We know what entrance to come in and when. We know how to beeline to the pew. And our exit strategy isn't bad either. This understanding of offering ourselves in worship completely and totally is where David quenched his thirst for God. And so we're left asking the question, here it is, am I doing the same, offering it all? Are we together as a community of faith offering it all to God this morning so that we can leave saying, man, I worshiped. Because this is how David eventually was able to rise up and move forward. He continues to rip his soul open and ask, why am I so upset? Why am I so upset inside? I love other translations. They put it this way. Why am I so disquieted? I hope that word haunts you this week like it did me. Why am I so disquieted in my soul? Here is where he realizes his hope in God and that the God who walks through the valley and shadow of death with us is always with us. And this is David's aha moment. Here it is. In spite of his tears, in spite of his fears, he says, I will again. No matter what's happened in the past, no matter how life is hitting me in the present, I will again give thanks. Other translations put it this way, yet. Yet I will give thanks. No matter what has happened, what is happening, yet I will give thanks. Other translations say, no matter what. No matter what's happened in the past, what's happening today, no matter what, I will give thanks. I will worship. I am this. Bishop Webb called this yet praise. Yet praise. Yet praise. That no matter what happens in life, what has happened in life, yet I will praise God. My prayer is that you will reflect on Psalm 42 this week. And no matter what's happening in our lives, that we will say the same. Yet I will praise